All right, good morning, everybody. I am joined today by Seth Boomsma, track athlete. Talk to us a little bit, I guess, first of all, about your background, who you are, things like that.
Well, thank you for having me, first off.
For sure.
I think this is incredible what you're doing with this podcast to raise awareness for the athletes and coaches that are here in South Dakota, and especially Sioux Falls area. But basically, my background is I've been around the Sioux Falls area for my whole life. I went to Tri-Valley High School, which is a combination of Crooks, Colton, Lions, basically in the middle of a cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I went on to a Division I school out of high school. Just wasn't the right fit. I ended up transferring to a small NAIA school, Dakota State University in Madison, South Dakota. And from there, I took off. Throughout high school, I was a 4-time state champion. College, I was a 6-time All-American, including 2 national runner-ups indoors over the 60-meter dash. And then I ended up turning pro after college and signing a pro contract with Brooks after that. So I've been pro now for 2 years.
Yeah, that's that like exactly is it. That's part of the basis of the show that I wanted to do, is show some of the talent that's out there, as far as, you know, Sioux Falls athletes and South Dakota athletes that I think a lot of times it's surprising to see that level of talent. So DSU, obviously, I went to DSU for a little bit as well. Which hall did you stay in? You I bet you were at the Apex or something. You didn't.
No, I stayed in the dorm my sophomore year. Then I was in an apartment. I think it was Richardson Hall.
Yeah. All right.
Sophomore year. So.
3rd floor, Richardson.
Yeah.
All right. I feel good about that. You'd mentioned earlier too that you have some siblings as well, athletes as well.
Yeah, I have a little brother. He actually just finished up his college basketball career at Dakota State University. So he'll graduate this year in May. So yeah, I have one brother, and name is Brendan. So
sure, and he actually was coached and then coached with Alan, one of the guys we had on before.
Yeah, he worked under Alan Bertram and coached on a couple AAU teams over the summer for the Pentagon. So
awesome. Yeah. And by the way, you'll notice that the switching of cameras is slightly less. This is the first time we've ever not had our production guy with us, Robel. I don't know if he slept in or what the deal is. So we'll so if I apologize if I don't switch over cameras fast enough and you end up looking at me while Seth's talking, we'll figure it out. So what got you into track initially, and did you play any other sports when you were in high school?
Yeah, so basically it's kind of a funny story how I got into track. Like, first off, I was basically played kind of like all sports growing up throughout my youth.
Mm-hmm.
But I was mainly basketball, baseball, and like 7th grade coming around, and that was the time to that's when track like actually started, you know, because they have the youth track, but we were never involved in that.
Sure.
So 7th grade came around, my mom's like, "You're going out for track." I'm like, "No, I don't want to." You know, like we had our final basketball tournament that weekend, and like baseball was coming up. I was like, "No, I don't want to get hurt for any of that." So my mom's like, "No, you're going out for track. You're going out for track." My dad steps in and he's like, "Yes, you're going out for track." So I was like, "Fine, I'll do it." My mom's like, "You're doing the 800. My dad's like, "No, he's a sprinter." So I went out, first meet, I ran the 100. They're like, you know, Tri-Valley, your fastest runner. I step up, you know, I'm in Nike basketball shorts, you know, a tank top underneath my jersey and heavy Brooks running shoes, and everyone else is wearing spikes and in the blocks. I'm doing a standing start. I ended up winning the race. And I remember riding back home with my parents. I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like,
right.
It was like a different energy that I felt like right away. Like basketball and baseball were always there, but it was like I could step up to the starting line, and I knew it was all reliant on what I could do.
Right.
I didn't have to rely on other teammates. Not saying that I'm not a team guy or that I'm selfish or anything, but it was like I loved the fact that I could step on the track and I could control everything, you know, in that environment.
Yeah. What do you think made your parents decide that track was going to be something that they wanted you to at least try? I mean, it's not very often that you see. I mean, sometimes you'll see like a football parent that'll say, "Okay, I want you to go out for football." Were your parents heavily involved in track, or was this just something that they saw in you early? How does that work out?
Yeah, so I mean, it was basically kind of everyone did it. Was kind of the philosophy, but like my parents ran track, and my mom was brought up to varsity in high school, and my dad was pretty fast in high school as well. But they were never really successful at the like state meet level. But it was just kind of what everyone did. Because track back then for them was relatively popular.
Sure.
Everyone did it to get fast for football, volleyball, basketball, whatever the case may be. So they said you're gonna go out because we're gonna make you go out, and that was kind of the end of that, and went out, and I just fell in love with it from the very start.
Yeah, that's definitely something. I'm terrible at running. Like if you asked me to run any amount, like I would absolutely hate it. So that's it. Watching guys like track athletes just absolutely amaze me. My stepbrothers were both in track for a long time, and that just was not my cup of tea. So talk to me first of all about the transition from going from a high school athlete to a college athlete, and then from a college athlete to a pro athlete. Just some of the changes that you felt, or some of the mindset changes maybe that you had to do in order to go from that initial high school level into the college level, and then from the college level into that pro level.
Yeah. High school transition to college was relatively easy for me, just because in my senior year, in the most humble way to say this, I dominated like everything, I ran. So it was like, sure, I was like ready for the collegiate level. It was like, I need that competition. I need to feel it and, feel guys next to me, because in my senior year, when I was going to University of South Dakota, like I would have won the Summit League in the 60 and 100 as a senior in high school. So I was really craving that. But like once you get into college, like the mentality does switch a little bit, like because now everyone's fast, and then it comes down to the little things that you do. And then the transition from college to pro is even more drastic, because now your attention to detail has to be even that much better, because you basically have like these boxes that you got to tick, right? If you're doing a block start and you get that first step right, that's step A. You need to get
right.
Step B, C, D right, and you can't skip steps, because if you get A and C right and you get B wrong, guess what? You're going to get destroyed by these guys that are running at the professional world-class level.
So is that something then that you end up having to get other coaches to go with, or is that something that you're able to work on yourself mostly, or how does that, I guess, process work? I know, like I said, for us, a lot of times you're looking for other coaches out there that you can maybe model, or other coaches that you can talk to. But once you got to the professional level, is there a lot of coaches around here that are able to talk you through some of the professional level, or is that something that you're having to go out and find, I guess?
I've done a pretty good job throughout my career surrounding myself with a close team that's helped me. Mm-hmm. I mostly coach myself now. But like you said, like once you get to that level, and I've always kind of been like the guy that would just like cold call or cold email
sure.
a bunch of different coaches, because I wanted to pick their brain. It didn't matter if you were over in the UK or mm-hmm. if you were over in Boston, Massachusetts. Like I wanted to contact you, and I was gonna, whether you told me no, or you told me, sent me a long paragraph, whatever the case may be, I wanted to learn and figure that out. And kind of like I ran at the USA Championships, indoor championships 3 weeks ago. And on that Sunday, when I didn't make the final, I was like, okay, I'm going to use this as a track and field school. So I was like picking brains of all these world-class coaches.
Sure.
I talked to this one coach, he coached a world record holder, Olympic gold medalist, different things like that. And I just wanted to pick their brain. I usually ask, one mental side of the question, physical side, like training, and then one like race question. And then usually with other world-class athletes, I'll ask kind of like a financial question. How do they balance all that stuff that goes into it?
Yeah, for sure. Those are all really good areas, obviously. Let's go through a few of those, actually. So your and first of all, kudos to you. One of the biggest things I like to see as a coach is, if you do have, like, maybe you don't get the best benefit out of, winning a competition or whatever, but at least trying to find the best benefit out of it through a training and getting better from that. So that's awesome. Talk to me a little bit about the mental side of running. So, I know it for my sport, but for your sport, I mean, obviously, any sport, it's going to be pretty big, the mental side of things. So a little bit of your mental aspect to that short run.
Yeah. So basically with a sprint, like indoors, there's 60-meter dash, outdoors, there's the 100, 200. And basically with that, you have to be, as aggressive as possible. Like you can't let up. You can't be thinking, because if you become conscious of like your struggles during that time period, that's when you are done. You know, there's nothing you can do, because when that gun goes off, you can't be thinking. It's got to be basically just react, and you're going, and it's just natural instinct to do what you've done, and that attention to detail that comes from the training translates to the track, because you do that 100 times in the training, so then it just translates to that race. But the mindset has to be, I like to have like what I call like the Mamba mentality. Kobe Bryant, I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan, and one thing he always talks about is being an assassin. You know, constantly, you know, if you see a chance at victory, make sure you step on their throat, and you don't let off the gas. You know, when somebody comes to watch you run, leave a lasting impression like I've never seen somebody do that before. So that's my mentality. I go into it, you know, I just want to be, you kind of like bottle it all up, and you save it to that race, and you let all that explode. And it's like that mindset that you get into is something that it's undescribable, because it's like you become something else entirely. I always tell people that when I'm on the track, I'm totally different than when I'm off the track.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's like a 1980s movie. God, I can't even remember it. It was like not a Steven Seagal, a Sylvester Stallone movie, where like he's like, when I turn my hat around, I turn into a machine. And that's for a lot of people, a lot of athletes, that's kind of the way it is. I mean, you're definitely switching over into a different realm. You're trying to be, you know, the best athletic version of yourself. Maybe not the kindest, nicest person in the world, but the best athletic version of yourself for that, you know, however long you're competing. And that's, it seems like I said, a lot of athletes are like that. And if you don't have that, it's a big fault for you, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree, because, you know, like you said, you have to basically turn that switch on. So it's like, you know, you get in there and you're not caring about anything else in the world. And that's why my passion has always been in track and field, is because like it's on you, and like you come to it, and it's like you can shut off, you know, everything in the outside world. And it's just, you can bottle up everything that happens in life, relationships, different things like that, and use it to your benefit when you get onto that track or whatever your sport may be. And then, you know, you kind of all unleashes in an aggressive, you know, mode. So
yeah. And so you're primarily doing the 60 meter, right?
Yeah, 60 meter indoors, then 100, 200 outdoors.
Okay.
So,
and then as far, you know, we talked about a little bit about that mental side of things, physical side of things. What are you doing right now in preparation for, like you said, you just got back from indoor national championships, right?
Yep.
And so talk to me about your regimen a little bit of training beforehand on the physical side of that.
Yeah, so basically, you can only sprint so many times a week, you know, because it's so taxing on your body. So basically I sprint 2 or 3 times a week. Like right now my setup is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I have a big sprint session, and then I'll usually hit, you know, one plyometric related to that sprint session, whether it be acceleration, max velocity, or speed endurance. And then I'll go and lift. So usually, and then the off days are Thursday and Sunday. Then my low intensity days are Tuesday and Saturday. So basically, you know, those long workouts, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, are usually about 3 hours. You know, the warm up takes an hour, then you sprint for an hour, then you lift for an hour. So basically it's long, it's grueling. But, you know, it's something that I've always enjoyed, is, you know, training as hard as possible and getting my body ready for it. And as we transitioned into outdoors, I noticed, you know, like indoors, when it comes back to that attention to detail, is, you know, I noticed like my accel mechanics weren't where I wanted them to be. So I'm, you know, dialing in what I need to do for outdoors preparation here too.
Sure. Does that, I mean, you're talking to a complete novice on the running side of things. Does indoor and outdoor change quite a bit based on, you know, weather, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially when you're in the area of South Dakota. So, you know, like everyone always, you know, like I love indoors just because it's 70 degrees indoors all the time. You know, there's no problem with it in this area.
A peak condition.
Yeah. So where you go outdoors, like I have to travel south or fly just to have good meets, because like, you know, like my outdoor opener will be here at the end of March, you know, so I kind of have like a few options for that meet, depending on weather. You know, do I go south to Kansas, or do I stay in the area to compete? You know, so it's, but yeah, it's definitely a transition to kind of, because we can't even run outdoors right now, because if you try sprinting outdoors, you know,
you're gonna hurt something.
Yeah.
It's, I like to use that same excuse, but I'm still not gonna run outside. So you know, you're talking about having to travel a little bit. You recently went to was that last year that you went to Ireland, or maybe a year and a half ago?
Last summer. Yeah.
Okay. Where else have you traveled? And I guess, what did you think of going overseas to Ireland and training?
Yeah,
or,
so
competing.
Ireland was an outstanding experience for me. I wanted to compete on that European circuit, and that's kind of where the main pro circuit is, if you will, for the world-class athletes. And I got into 2 meets over there. I just wanted to experience it and kind of show myself, what it's all about. And
Sure.
eventually I'd like to go over there for a month and compete at various countries. But that experience was outstanding. And I actually won my first race over there, over 200 meters. And, you compete against all these guys from different countries and everything. You're not only running against the clock, you're running for money too,
Right.
So like it all depends on your place. And if you're first, you make this much money. If you're, fifth, you make this much, if you're eighth, you might not make anything, so you're running, for a lot of different things, but at the core of it is your passion. Outside of that, I've traveled to Florida, which is basically like the hotbed for sprinting, in my opinion. I've traveled to Florida 3 times last year. I've traveled, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico a few weeks ago for indoors. Throughout college, I was at national championships in Gulf Shores, Alabama, Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, just kind of all over the U.S.
Sure. The financial side of things, obviously, that travel costs a lot of money. So is the track and field world fairly lucrative, you think, or is that like our sport? Like, I could go and win like there's not a ton of money in our sport. So like, I could win a championship and I might win, $500 or $1,000 or whatever. There's bigger tournaments that you can win quite a bit more money, but I guess track, is that quite lucrative or not very lucrative?
It's about the exact same.
Yeah.
If you're at the very, very high level, considering it's an Olympic sport, you can, if you're an Olympic medalist in your event,
right.
Usually the events vary too. If you're an Olympic medalist in the 100, you're going to make a lot more than you would if you're an Olympic medalist in, say, the 5K type thing. So,
right.
But yeah, it's not very lucrative, as you say. Like it's tough to make it by, so that's why you have to pick and choose. One thing about the Euro circuit is you pay for your travel to get over there, and once you get over there, you're good.
Yeah, it's relatively cheap to be able to go from one country to another because they're so much smaller than like the U.S. or whatever.
Exactly.
So talk to me a little bit. We talked a little bit off camera about the sponsorships through companies like Brooks. So you're able to get that. So talk to me a little bit about that sponsorship, and then I'll kind of give my 2 cents as well. So
so basically, when I was out of college, I didn't really I knew I wanted to continue to do this, but as you go on your path in your journey, you're gonna have people tell you, go on, get a full-time job, blah blah blah,
right.
So on and so forth. And I had a lot of people tell me that, but one thing I always had was my parents. They were terrific role models for me, and they always said, go after what you want. We're willing to, we're gonna support you as much as possible. And so I was like, you know what? I ended my college career. I was like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? And I actually was going to move out to Phoenix, Arizona with a coach. Well, that coach ended up turning around to be banned by USADA.
Okay.
So and that was 2 weeks out when I was going to move out there. So I was like, okay.
At least it happened 2 weeks before and not 2 weeks after.
Exactly. So I stayed around here. I'm training hard that fall, and around Thanksgiving break, I'm sitting there. I just got done with a lifting session. And I checked my phone, and I sent applications and different things, all my information to a bunch of different shoe sponsors and everything. Mm-hmm. So, and I didn't really expect one at the time being. And Brooks sent me an email, and they're like, we want to sponsor you. Here's the contract proposal for 2017. This was on Thanksgiving. I remember, I saw it, and I got emotional. I was like, oh wow, this is like a dream come true for me. It was like, I win a state championship. I had boxes that I wanted to tick. I wanted to win a state title. I wanted to be a college All-American. I wanted to win a national title, which I came up short. But then I wanted to turn pro. And when I got that contract, I broke out. It was I never get emotional or anything. It was
mm-hmm.
that was so emotional for me. And I remember my brother being right there with me. So that was 2017, and Brooks was great to me. But the thing is with track and field is you're only as good as your last race, and they only care what you're doing for them. Or are you competing at the highest of highs? So you get that one chance, and boom, it's over. So I found out a year later, which was towards the end of 2017 that Brooks wasn't renewing my contract. And at the time, I was kind of like a little bit shattered. It kind of like hurt me a little bit. But at the same time, it like kind of like pushed me over the edge and kind of gave me that extra push that I needed to keep going and keep pursuing this. And, basically, like my whole career has been kind of overshadowed. So I kind of used that and was like, I'm going to defy these odds and I'm going to beat them. And, you're going to see it, and Brooks will look back and it'll be like, oh, wow, we made a mistake dropping this guy. So,
yeah, that you just use it as a chip on your shoulder and go from there. So,
exactly.
I had a similar thing happen. I got sponsored. Like, I was lucky to be sponsored by a couple companies. And for me, I was like, the hardest one was that I got sponsored by a company. Everything was going great. I felt like the same thing, just complete elation when you get sponsored by a company, because you're like, okay, this is going to work out. Everything's going to go well. Because when you're an athlete, it's always that matter of like, okay, how can I not only do well athletically, but how can I at least make things financially in order to make it viable? And so you get the sponsorship, and I ended up hurting my knee probably about 2 months into the sponsorship, and then I got pretty much dropped right away off of that, just because if, like you said, if you're not furthering that brand, then it's really tough to keep those sponsorships. So it's something that is always crazy to me, where it seems like that is so fleeting. Well, you'll get guys that'll get a sponsorship and then something will happen, and they'll get hurt or they'll have a bad race, things like that, and you'll lose it so quick. So like you said, it seems like you have a really good mentality for that, of like, okay, I'm not going to, sit on my laurels and stay, I don't want to do this anymore. It's a matter of like, okay, I'll prove to them that, get it, better and move on from there. So would that be something that you would, if they were to say, hey, we want to sponsor you again, would be something that you would do, you think, or no?
Yeah, it would definitely be something that I would think about, because you want to take everything that you can possibly get,
right.
Especially in this sport. Because you can't really hold grudges. One thing I've learned throughout that first year of being a pro, being my own coach, being my own agent, being the athlete, is never hold grudges and never be too attached to something. So once you get attached to something, because like Brooks, they could drop you, just like that, because it's very unforgiving. And so if they came knocking on my door again, I would look at the contract. I would kind of like see, and I might use that. I might, contact other deals and maybe say, hey, this company's looking to sponsor me again, but I would be more interested in sponsoring, connecting with you. Mm-hmm. So it all kind of depends on what it may be, but you're always going to take a look at everything and assess it after that. So.
For sure. Do a lot of track athletes have agents, you think, or is that for the most part just done by the athlete as far as those contracts, things like that?
It kind of varies. Some do, some don't. I was very fortunate enough to, like, I'm very attention to detail, like I've said before, and like I study the sport to the core. So like I would connect with coaches and different athletes and kind of see, like when I went over the Euro circuit, I did that all myself. I made the what I was going to get over there and different things like that, my appearance fees and different things.
Sure.
So like one thing that I try to do is like teach athletes is you can be your own agent too, because agent is obviously going to take a certain percentage of that. Right. And I knew an athlete from Jamaica who had an agent, and it didn't work out well for him. And once I heard that, I was like, you know what? Until I'm at, a crazy top level where I'm, rolling in everything and I have all these deals, I'm not going to have an agent. Like, I think I can do it myself, handle it. And that way I know the negotiations that I'm putting there forward. So.
It's like you said, it seems like for the most part, as long as you're staying on that, entry level into that pro world, it doesn't get too crazy until the, like you said, tons of deals, things like that. So, I would definitely agree. So we talked a little bit about the mental side. We talked a little bit about the physical side, rehab stuff. What are you doing for that most of the time? I know that you said that, obviously, some of the float spa stuff, you're doing a little bit of that. Talk a little bit about that, and then any other rehab stuff that you do. Yeah,
so one thing that I do, and I try to do it as much as possible, once a week, is do escape float spa. Mm-hmm. And basically what that is just a flotation tank. It's, like 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt, and it's anti-gravity. So you're sitting there floating there, and you float for an hour. And the physical benefits you notice right away, but it's the mental benefits that actually help you along the way, because you can use it as like a visualization tool, so like if you're getting ready for a big training session or for a meet or whatever the case may be, you can go in there, kind of connect with it, get your deep breathing going, and then all of a sudden it's like you've played it over and over in your mind. So when it happens, in the real world, it's like, of course it's here because it's been in my mind for so long.
So it's for you, it's every bit as a tool for mental side as it is for physical.
Exactly. Yep.
For some reason, I keep trying to bring up a video of it, and it's failing me. I'm gonna yell at Robel for not being here right now. I'm just hitting buttons. Nothing's working whatsoever. It should be switching over to a video of actually float spa stuff, but it doesn't seem to be working. So, we'll switch up. I do want to go through a couple of your meets and kind of talk me through some of those as well. So I'll try to bring those up here real quick. But before you do that, I'm going to actually spin around and have you talk about something else so I can double check and see what I'm doing wrong over here. Major injuries, anything like that you've had?
Yeah. So basically, with track and field being a sprinter, there's more tissue injuries than anything. So with that, I had a few hamstring injuries throughout college. So basically my college career, like I went 2013 had an outstanding year, which might have been my best year ever. 2014 had a pretty good year, but 2014 it hit. I had a tendon injury in my foot. Then all of a sudden that just kind of like sprinkled upstream. I had a hamstring injury, a couple hamstring injuries on both sides of my right hamstring. And then I ended up having a hip flexor injury. And that all happened within the span of, like 15 months. So with that comes the rehab and recovery as we talk about. And that's, the chiropractic, the deep tissue massage, the constant foam rolling, the ice baths, Epsom salt baths, contrast showers, different things like that, to get healthy. But I've never really had like a major injury that set me back so much like that. But, I've had a string of injuries that have, hit and, like people call you injury prone when really you're not. It's just another bump in the road.
Do you think that was primarily from overtraining, or that bump right there, was it just a string of unfortunate events, you think, or was it from overtraining? What do you think it was from? By the way, I'm going to run over to the other one, so if you guys see me in the background and run into the other station, I apologize. Yeah,
so basically the injury that I had to my foot in 2014 was the first meet of the year, and it was a tendon injury. I was coming around the curve indoors, and indoor curves are really tight. I ended up injuring it. I ran throughout that 2014 indoor season, injured, and it was basically like, I ended up getting runner-up that year again, and what happened after that was I got a hip flexor injury. Yeah, I had 2 hamstring injuries, and it was all within, like I said, that 15-month span where it just happened, and it wasn't because of overtraining or anything like that. It was because of simply the kinetic chain just wasn't working out for me, and it transferred into something else, and I continued to try to push through it. So there was probably a little bit of over ambition on my part, and that kind of caused me to get injured and continue to get injured.
So we're going to go over a couple of the real quick of your last 2 meets, one from 3 months ago and then one from 2 months ago, and at least that's when it was uploaded anyways. Is this pretty accurate, you think?
Yeah. Yep.
So this first one is an SDSU. So bringing this up here real quick. So and then you are in there you go.
Yep, right in the middle.
So right now, your best 60-meter time?
My best 60-meter time is 6.74 seconds.
Man, ridiculous. And best 100-meter time?
My best 100 is 10:44, which, I definitely think that's going to be quite lower this year outdoors as the weather turns around for me and I have a consistent season.
And then so this next one I'll bring up, there's a little bit of time in beforehand. So talk to me through the mental side as you're sitting here warming up, getting ready to go. I believe you are
lane 4.
Yeah.
In the all black. Yeah. So basically the mental side here is, you're not thinking about really anything. You're thinking about, let's react to the gun and let's get out. Don't think, because as I said before, if you become conscious of your struggles or become conscious of what you need to do, that's when you're done. So here I'm just locking in. I have tunnel vision. It's basically when you get in that zone and don't think, and it's like nobody can like touch you because you become something else entirely. They say on your marks, you get locked in even more, maybe slap your legs a little bit, stretch out the hamstrings, get in the blocks, and then it's the set position, and then the gun goes off, and it's all the work you've done prior to that shows up right here.
As far as the competition in this area, is it pretty good for you right now, or are you finding that you have to go to quite a few other places to get better competition?
Yeah, I usually have to go quite a few other places to get better competition. Like my outdoor schedule is basically all big time meets, whether it's Division I meets or professional meets, just because indoors it's easier to stay around here with the weather factors and such, with it constantly being 70 degrees, and indoors and 60 there's not that much difference. You just you run what you run, and but outdoors you try to get that better competition as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Have you always been like you brought it up earlier with your dad as well, and your parents doing like shorter burst runs and sprinting? Has that always been a thing, or have you done some of the longer distance stuff as well?
Yeah, so that's actually a funny story too. So I was a sprinter until my sophomore year of high school, and I was 15, 16 years old, and I was like, you know what, I want to drop my other sports, basketball and baseball, and I want to pursue this as much as possible. And that was a decade ago. So at the time, I was a pretty decent 400 guy, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go out for cross country to help my 400. And I couldn't stand cross country. I ended up making state meet actually, but like everyone makes the state meet, but it was just, I couldn't stand it. And it was at that time where I was like, no, I don't even want to run 400 anymore. I want to do, 100, 200, and that's it. And at that time, like I was told by a lot of people, you're making a bad decision for pursuing this. You're making a bad decision for, letting go of basketball, baseball, and just focus on track. You're letting your teammates down, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it was more of like, this is what I love to do, so I'm going to do it as much as possible, because the sense of purpose was there, at that young age. And when I was constantly during school, and young kids don't do this at school, but during school, I was on the laptop and I was checking out, forums. I was asking questions, and came across was a coach / personal trainer here in Sioux Falls by the name of Alan Barch Jr. He private messaged me and was like, hey, I'm so-and-so. He gave me his background information. So I ended up signing up with training with him. And at the time I was kind of like, how much could a trainer from Sioux Falls know? Like, I've talked to these world-class coaches when I'm 16, like how much could this guy know? And I went with him, and it was like everything changed. It was like, this sport, I became more aware of like the mindfulness of the sport, how to train properly. And it became more of, you're going to work that more lactic window than you are the aerobic window, because aerobic means nothing in sprinting. It's all lactic, it's speed, it's power.
First of all, I want to do a quick commercials, but then I want to talk a little bit more about two of the things that you mentioned in there, just kind of the bias sometimes that people have about, folks from the like Sioux Falls area or Midwest area, I guess, and kind of go from there. So I'm going to play a quick commercial for the gym, obviously, because I got to get paid somehow out of this deal. And then quick shout out to the sponsors, and then we'll be back for a few more minutes and wrap it up. Also, just want to say big thanks to Team How. They've helped us out tremendously for this, and so if you ever have a chance, definitely, any heating, air conditioning, plumbing, stuff like that, check out How Plumbing and Heating, and then also Science Nutrition. If you get a chance, go see Joel. He obviously helps out with our show, but not only does he help out our show, I believe he's a sponsor of Seth as well. So is that correct? I believe I'm not messing that up. So.
Yeah, that's correct.
So talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, for me, whenever I would travel as an athlete, go to another place, I don't feel like I would actually command as much respect, just because of where I'm from. So when I would go and compete in New Jersey or go and compete in California or New York or Florida or wherever, they'd look and they'd be like, well, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from South Dakota. And just that mindset that maybe the Midwest is a little bit behind the times athletically.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head there. I mean, that's perfectly well stated, because what I always tell people is, and young athletes, is don't be afraid to be different. Be afraid to be like everyone else. So don't buy into the dynamic stereotype of, because you're from South Dakota, you can't be an athlete or you can't do this or that, because Sioux Falls specifically has had quite a few athletes be, very, very successful at what they do. And excellence is lonely. And when you get to that top, there's going to be people that, shun you for something or resent you or are jealous of, what you do. And then, as you said, you go to those, big competitions, and there's going to be people that are like, okay, what are you doing here? You're from South Dakota. You're not the stereotype that we typically see.
Right.
And, for someone like me, I'm even defying that stereotype, because I'm a short, I'm 5'7", white sprinter from South Dakota. You go to USA Championships and people are like, South Dakota, are you running the 1500 or are you running the 60? Because
right.
You just don't fit the mold of what they're used to. So, basically what I always tell people is, don't buy into that, just, be who you are. And there's a book that I love, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, that I read, and it's a seagull that wants to fly differently. And basically what happens is he's shunned and he's resented by the other seagulls because he wants to fly differently. And then all of a sudden he flies differently, and guess what happens? There's jealousy and resentment because he flew differently. So now you got to learn how to handle that too, right? So basically, don't be afraid to be different. Be afraid to be like everyone else.
Yeah. Is there any other books mental wise that you would suggest that you like besides that one?
Yeah. One that absolutely hits home with me is Tim Grover's book, Relentless, From Good to Great to Unstoppable. I love that book. I've read it so many times. Basically, it talks about that mental aspect of, get in the zone. He has 3 classifications of cooler, closer, and cleaner. And cleaner's the top level. He worked with MJ, Dwayne Wade, Kobe. And basically, he talks about how, you have to go after it, and you have to have a little bit of a dark side too, and the dark side thinks it's bad behavior, when dark side isn't bad behavior. It's just channeling all your, failures, your sadness, and using that to your benefit to what it is that you love doing.
Yeah. It just basically channeling it all into pure raw emotion and then going from there.
Yeah, exactly.
So as we wrap up here a little bit, anything that I missed, you think that you'd like to talk about? Some of the anything else?
I'd like to give a shout out to Science Nutrition. As you mentioned, they're a sponsor of the show as well.
Right there.
There you go. And one thing they've helped me out is really locking in that. I've always been pretty locked in with nutrition, but they've added that supplementation component with it, because being as an athlete, you needed that lifestyle to have 24/7 commitment, and it can't just be 3 hours a day and then you let the other 21 hours go to waste. So Science Nutrition has been very helpful with providing that nutrition supplementation plan to basically be at my best when the best is required.
And so where can people find out more information about you?
You can find out more information about me on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is just Seth Boomsma, just my name. And Facebook, I have a fan page titled Team Boom. It's basically, that's a fan page of kind of everything about me. And that's kind of where I post more about the meets and training and different sides of that go into it.
For sure. I was going to actually ask this earlier. Do you have a team that you like when you were saying you do your sprint workouts, do you go with other guys, or is that pretty much just an individual thing? How does that work out? And that one first, and then the second one, when you have additional guys to go with, does that help you push harder because they're pushing hard, or is that not needed because you're self-motivated?
Yeah, mainly I'm individualized, especially now because there's not many sprinters around the area. Occasionally I'll have a watchful eye help me out. But one thing that I do is, and it could help to a certain extent if they are as focused and locked in as, I want them to be. But for the most part, I have a timing system, which keeps me extra engaged. I have, my video camera, which keeps me, has that eye when I don't have another eye there. And basically, my motivation internally is, basically all I need to do this. I don't need exterior motivation to constantly motivate me because at the end of the day, this is what I love to do. But it'd be nice if I had a training partner. I've been trying to get a little group here started for a while now. I coach a few post-collegiate sprinters online, but I haven't been successful getting them down here yet. But
sure. Yeah. For me, it always seems like like you said, if you can get guys with the same mindset, that's the biggest thing, is just being able to build a team around that same mindset and get in and maybe one day I'm having a rough day, so then I have 3 other guys that are having a really good day and then can help me out mentally, be able to pull me up rather when I'm having a rough day. So some of your next competitions, what do you have coming up?
So I'll open up my outdoor season March 31st. I'll likely go down to Emporia State, Kansas, and that'll just mainly be a tune-up for kind of when the main season starts. And I'll go down to University of Arkansas, which is basically track town. I think they call it track town, something like that, USA. And it's a crazy fast track, lots of good competition down there. There'll be a few pros down there. That's April 14th. I'll run a couple local meets, and then I'll head down to Claremont, Florida, which, as I said before, is the hotbed for sprinters. That's a pretty big pro meet down there. That's an Adidas-sponsored camp. And then I'll go to a Altus meet, which is another pro camp out in Phoenix, Arizona, in June. And then I'll be preparing for the USA Outdoor Championships, which are actually in Des Moines, Iowa, this summer at the end of June. So,
man, that's a full schedule.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You mostly fly for those, or is that?
Yeah, like I'll try to drive as much as possible. Like, Kansas and Arkansas, I'll drive. It'll be 6 and 9 hour drives respectively. But Florida and Phoenix, I'll definitely fly. And the good thing about Sioux Falls is you can fly Allegiant and get them relatively cheap direct flights too. So
yeah, for sure. Well, thank you very much for being on. It's like I said, it was a pleasure. It's always interesting to me on sports that I have almost no knowledge on to learn a little bit more, so I don't feel so inept in that field. So thank you very much for coming on, and like I said, best of luck to you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And like I said before, this is awesome what you're doing. I look forward to seeing what you continue to bring to this podcast here.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. This is going to be a slightly awkward outro because I think I'm going to have to, yep, sure enough. I was hoping that I might be able to do that, but it doesn't show up, so you're going to see me awkwardly walk away. Have a good day, guys.